Hi, everybody. I hope you're continuing to have a good year. So we talked so far about drug abuse and some of the causes and the effects of drug abuse. And then we've also talked about anxiety and coping with anxiety. Today's lesson is going to be fairly similar to anxiety. We're going to be talking a little bit about anger and how you cope with anger. Something we all obviously deal with. You know, maybe you have some people in your life that you notice are seemingly angry all the time, right? They get worked up, they tend to lash out at others, and honestly, they can be kind of scary to be around at times. And then, you might know other people who it seems like they never really get angry. Well, that's probably not true. They probably do experience anger, but one of two things is going on with those people. First, maybe they're trying to ignore it, right? Maybe they're not acknowledging their anger and not expressing it. So it's building up over time. And, when it gets too intense, when it's built up over a long period of time, that's those people, maybe they lash out. Maybe they break things. Maybe they're by themselves when they do that. Or maybe they lash out at others, which tends to be the people you care about most is who you take your anger out on. Or those individuals who don't ever seem to be angry, maybe they just have healthy ways of dealing with their anger. Maybe they know how to manage that feeling and cope with it and stay in control, right? Because that's what's important with anger. If we respond to it emotionally, it can actually start to get us into a lot of trouble and can lead to some potentially severe consequences. But anger is normal, okay? It's something we all experience, just like anxiety or fear. It's a very natural, hardwired emotion in us. Um, it's not comfortable, right? It's different than anxiety, though. Both are uncomfortable. Anxiety is more of a fear, right, which is lead us to try and run away from a situation or try to avoid it. You're really anxious or fearful about an upcoming test, so you'd almost rather just not take the test. Anger almost has the opposite reaction, right? It's kind of when we're feeling threatened and we want to fight back, right? So we're not trying to avoid the situation, we want to push back against it. Like anxiety, it's not good or bad. It's not right or wrong. Your feelings are your feelings, right? It's not about those feelings being good or bad or right or wrong. They just are. It's more about understanding what they are and why they're existing. Okay, so like anxiety or anger, you never want to judge these feelings. It's more important to create an understanding or an awareness of them as opposed to suggesting you shouldn't feel that way, because everybody does get angry and it is justified at times. Um, but we need to express that anger. We need to not hang on to it. That way we can maintain control and we don't lose it. There's a wide range with anger. It can be a mild annoyance to a full-blown rage, and you're going to experience that range differently depending on where you are. Like anxiety, like happiness, like other feelings, there are physical changes or physical signs that we are experiencing this emotion. Again, it might be a little different for everybody, but some of the general ones are an increased heart rate, or you might have a tensing of your muscles. Sometimes I notice when people are angry, they clench their fists. So that's a big thing that happens as well. But I want you to take a second. What makes you angry? All right, so if you were to take out your orange workbooks and go to page 29, I want you to just take a minute, go through these 10 examples and rate them in terms of how angry that makes you. It's also going to ask you a few other questions. What else makes you mad that's maybe not on this list? If it's something that is a full-blown rage, physically, what does that feel like to you? And then it's going to ask you, what do you currently do with that feeling now? Some of you might already have great ways of dealing with anger, and some of you might need to learn better ways. But I think this is something, no matter where you are, it's something we can always improve on. So take a minute, pause the video, turn to page 29, and just take a couple of minutes to fill out that sheet. Okay. The benefit of doing something like that is, if you know what your triggers are, if you know what makes you angry, that can make you better prepared to deal with those situations. You could anticipate them coming, and you can use some of the skills you have to maintain control. The more awareness you have of yourself and the situations that cause these feelings and emotions, the better prepared you're going to be to respond to them in a way that allows you to maintain control. It's not just with anger, it's with anything, really. But again, everyone's different. So, cutting in line, maybe that made someone really mad versus somebody else. It might not make you angry at all. Everyone experiences this differently and for different reasons. You know, the physical reactions, like we talked about, the increased heart rate, the tightening of muscles, that's never comfortable either. Like those feelings, the physical sensations are usually unpleasant and uncomfortable. But, you know, there are things that we can do to get better, just like anxiety. There are things that we can do to maintain our control. Now, just like anxiety, there's hundreds of different things that you can do to manage that feeling or to relieve yourself of that tension that is caused by that feeling. I'm only going to review some of the basics. Okay, this is really just sort of the tip of the iceberg. You know, when it comes to managing feelings and emotions, everyone's different. So what might work for one person might not work for another. So what we're going to do is just cover some of the basics. Okay, so how do you stay in control? What can you do? Well, first off, losing control really is only going to make the situation worse, right? And usually when you lose control around a feeling of anger, it actually increases that feeling of anger. And if you're in an argument with somebody else and the anger is on both sides, you're going to see the tension in that argument. It's going to grow. Both of you are just going to get angrier and angrier. So one way to really control that anger is to take a step back from the situation. And kind of assess, like, is my level of anger, is that appropriate right now? We're going to talk about different ways you can do that. One of the big skills we're going to talk about is reframing and how that can be helpful. But again, it's important to recognize what your physical sensations are when you're angry so that you can help identify what you're feeling. And again, knowing what makes you angry, knowing what those triggers are, is just going to put you in a situation where you're better prepared to respond to those situations when they do come up. Okay, so if you turn to page 30 in your workbook, the things we're briefly going to cover now, they're all in your workbook for you to reference. Okay. Counting to 10. This is pretty straightforward. This is probably one that you're all aware of, but maybe you're not aware of why we do this. So not only do you count to 10, you want to make sure you're engaging in some deep breathing as well. Well, delivering that oxygen to your brain is going to help you gain more clarity, right? It's going to allow you to think and process information better, because remember, when we have these strong feelings or emotions, it really impacts our cognitive functioning. So it makes it difficult for us to think clearly. We might do or say things that otherwise we typically wouldn't. So that's why you want to take the deep breaths. Counting to 10 is just sort of a way to get you focused on something else. It takes you away from the situation temporarily. And that brief 10 seconds might be all that you need to really calm down. But again, it's getting you focused on something else, and it's taking you sort of away from the emotion. So that with the breathing is really what's going to help provide some of that mental clarity. If you're doing this, in a situation where maybe you're arguing with somebody else, you know, you don't want to totally ignore them anymore, because that's only going to continue to make them angry. So, you know, you can effectively do this while still listening to somebody at the same time, and maintaining eye contact to show them that you're listening as well. Self-statements. This seems simple, right? But it's, you know, the simple things we do are often effective. So I remember when I was first introduced to this idea when I was young, to say different things to myself, right? To engage in self-talk. I thought it was kind of silly at first, until I actually started using it and found out, like, oh, okay, this is actually kind of effective and can work. And again, it's going to be a little different for everybody. For some of you, this might be great, and this might be really simple to do. For others of you, when you're in that moment of anger, it might be difficult to engage in some self-statements. So this might not be a strategy for you. But again, it's something that is worth trying if you haven't already. If it doesn't work the first time, it doesn't mean it's not going to work for you. If it works for you, it also doesn't mean it's always going to work for you. So that's why it's important to learn as many of these skills as possible, so that you can call on different things in different moments. So just some things that you can say to yourself when you're recognizing you're starting to get angry. Again, this is why it's important to know what those triggers are and what those physical sensations are that create anger in you. If you ask yourself a question like, is this worth fighting about? And we're going to get into this a little bit more. Say things like, I can handle this, I can stay calm, I can control my reactions. So give something like this a shot, and you actually might find it's actually pretty effective, albeit rather simple. Okay, reframing is the big one. So if you remember in the anxiety video, I talked about human behavior and sort of how it works, right? We have a situation, something happens. Okay, and then we have a thought about that situation. It can happen pretty quickly, but we process what's going on in front of us. We form a perception of what's happening. From that thought, that's where our feelings sort of really kick in. Okay, it's not the situation itself, it's how we're looking at the situation or how we're thinking about it. So if we're able to reframe our understanding of what's happening, if we're able to change how we're thinking about a situation, this is going to have a tremendous impact on the level of anger that we're experiencing. Not that we're still not going to be angry, we might be justifiably angry at what's happening, but this might help lessen the degree of it, which will make it more manageable and will allow us to stay in control. Okay. Sometimes this is easier said than done. I think we may have talked about reframing around anxiety too. And if we didn't, I just want to share this. If this is something you're struggling with, this is something that's effectively and I don't want to say easily worked on in counseling, but counseling can be really helpful with reframing our understanding of a situation. Some general questions you can ask yourself to sort of help your ability to reframe a situation. Is it worth getting angry about? Am I sure this person's really out to hurt or insult me? Is there another way to get what I want? So one example that always comes up for me is road rage, right? And I don't really have road rage anymore, but I did a lot when I was younger, especially when I first started driving. And one thing that used to drive me nuts was people would cut me off, right? It happens all the time on the road. And I'd get really angry and I'd start yelling. And it wasn't until I actually started to engage in some reframing that I started to question my actions around that anger. Like, first off, I'm yelling in a car to a person who can't hear me. That's not really doing anything. In fact, that yelling is just kind of creating more anger in me. And what I was finding is, as I was doing that, I would get more and more angry on my drives. And as little things happened on the road, I would have these very intense reactions to them, this very angry reaction to these situations. And it wasn't really helping me. And in fact, it was actually making me unsafe in a vehicle. It's not good to have that high degree of emotion going on when you're operating a vehicle. It can lead to some very serious consequences. There's stories in the news all the time about what people do in the name of road rage. Odds are that person didn't see me when they cut me off, because I've done it before too. And it's generally, oh, I didn't see that person, right? Is that really worth me getting mad over? No, probably not. Is it dangerous for the other person to not be paying attention? Sure. But is me getting angry at them going to change the situation? No. Once I was sort of able to create that different understanding, once I was able to view it a different way, it's a lot easier to manage, and I don't get angry on the road anymore. I don't want to say that. I do, but I keep it in control, right? I'm able to use this skill of reframing pretty quickly, and that makes it easier to deal with the anger, and it diminishes, and I'm safer on the road because of it. Here's another situation. Say you drop your folder in the hall, there's papers going everywhere, and I don't know, somebody, maybe even a friend, runs right by you without offering to help. You might get angry in that situation. Again, don't judge the feeling. It's there. Okay. It's not good or bad. You just are angry that happened. But do you want to go and yell at that person for what they did? Probably not. I don't know how that's really going to help the situation, and odds are they didn't intentionally ignore you, right? So the reframing might be, okay, I do wish that person had stopped and helped, but maybe they were late. Maybe they were in a hurry. Maybe they didn't even notice, right? Maybe they didn't even see you. So it's not they don't care, they didn't want to help. They just maybe had other things going on in their life that prevented them from helping you, whether it be they were late or, again, they didn't even notice that you were there. Reframing again, I think this is an important skill to practice. So if you turn to page 31 in your workbook, there's actually a couple of exercises there where you're going to A, assess your level of anger at the situation, and then B, try and create some reframing, try and create a different way of understanding the situation that's going to help you remain in control. Okay, a couple more things about anger before we finish. Like I talked about with anxiety, all of these feelings create an energy, okay? And if we try to ignore our anger or our anxiety or whatever feeling it may be, that energy stays with us no matter how much we think we're ignoring it. It's important that we express that energy and get it out. This is where finding somebody who's supportive is helpful to talk about it. Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a family member, maybe it's a teacher. Maybe it is a counselor, anybody in your life to just talk about and process that feeling of anger and what was going on. Simply talking about these things is a good way to let that energy out. Walking away. If you're in an argument with somebody and tensions are escalating, you're both getting angrier, right? Again, anger is that feeling of being attacked or threatened. So it's natural that you're going to get defensive if you feel like somebody's attacking you, and vice versa. The other person's going to get defensive as well. Sometimes in a situation, it's helpful to walk away from it temporarily, to let that anger sort of cool down so that you can engage with this person and be more level-headed and be more in control. This is an effective strategy. It really is, especially like if it's with a friend. It's a lot easier to say, hey, look, I think we're both getting a little bit angry. Why don't we walk away and revisit this situation? Okay, then go somewhere, talk about the anger, or go practice one of the exercises we talked about today. Exercise. That's a good way to get that energy out as well. Some people like to draw, some people like to write. Again, there's a million different things that'll work, that'll help you sort of get this energy out. These are just some of the basics that we talked about today. I understand anger can be a struggle in a lot of people's lives, and a lot of people have a hard time managing feelings of anger. If you think this is, if you think I get really angry, I lose control, and it just makes the situation worse, and I don't know what to do about it, this is where counseling might be helpful for you. It might be a good thing for you to pursue, because anger management is very treatable, and it's something that a counselor can really help you find a set of skills that are going to be effective for you and allow you to manage feelings of anger and stay in control. Okay, that's it for today, everybody. Take care and have a good day.